I used to believe distance was a switch you could flip. New city, new job, new phone plan, and the past would stay in the rear view like a truck you'd already passed. It turns out distance is more like fog. You can be surrounded by it without ever leaving your own street. That's what loving Riley did to me. Even after I moved 8 hours south, she still found ways to hang in the air. We were together for 3 years. She was 29, a brand strategist at a boutique agency that survived on clever words and pretty mood boards. I was 33, operations manager for a regional furniture distributor, the kind of company people forget exists until their couch shows up on time. We met because her agency pitched a holiday campaign to my boss, and she came to the warehouse to understand the product journey. Riley was the only person in heels I've ever seen take notes next to a loading dock. She asked smart questions, smiled at everyone, and thanked the forklift driver by name like she'd known him for years. I didn't stand a chance. When you love someone like that, you build a shape around them and call it home. I thought I'd proposed in October, rings bookmarked, flight alerts set for the weekend. I wanted to take her to Santa Fe. But in September, she asked for a break. She said she needed to figure herself out, that maybe we'd rushed our timeline, that she felt lonely next to me. It took me a week to realize her loneliness had a name and a LinkedIn page. They worked late. They stayed behind after client dinners. Eventually, they didn't hide. I didn't beg. It wasn't dignity, it was clarity. I broke the lease, found a sublet in Austin. My company had a branch there that needed a manager yesterday and drove south with a mattress, a toolbox, and a toothbrush. The apartment looked like a music student had decorated it in 2007 and stopped mid-song, popcorn ceilings, a balcony the size of a bath mat, a view of a parking lot lit orange at night. It was gorgeous because it was mine. My first week in Austin, I did the things you do when you're trying not to think. I changed my number, sent a group text to the 3 friends who needed to know, deleted every photo that didn't feel like evidence, and emptied the trash. I told HR my emergency contact was my sister, not Riley. I put my running shoes by the door and my phone on Do Not Disturb. I ate tacos standing up and learned the grocery store layout by heart. I told myself every routine was a brick, and brick by brick the wall would hold. Riley texted me anyway. I'd blocked her in one place and forgotten another. A message found its way through the first week. I miss your coffee in the mornings. Hope you're okay. There was a time that would have gutted me. 2 ordinary words aimed like a scalpel miss. Mornings. I didn't answer. 2 days later, an unknown number called 3 times and left a voicemail that began, "I know you said not to contact you, but..." I flagged it as spam and went to the gym. It didn't end with her. People are ecosystems, not islands. A mutual friend, let's call him Kyle, because of course his name was Kyle, sent an Instagram DM that said, "She's in therapy, man. She knows she messed up. Don't you think people deserve second chances?" I typed and deleted 6 versions of the sentence I really wanted to say, which was, "I gave all my chances away a minute at a time while she was with somebody else." Instead, I wrote, "I'm starting over. Please don't pass along messages," and hit send. He sent a prayer hands emoji, and then nothing for a week, which is how long it took for Riley's sister to message my sister to tell me Riley hadn't eaten in days. Meg asked what she should do. I told her to do what people do when they see a storm through a window: be kind and don't go outside. I kept my life small on purpose. Work, gym, groceries, run by the river, call my sister on Sundays, say yes to the softball team. A guy from receiving invited me to join. The first time I laughed without noticing, it was because a dog in a sweater stole a taco from a man in a cowboy hat on the Riverwalk. The sound felt wrong in my mouth and then right. A month after the move, I was paying for coffee when I heard my name said with the certainty of possession. Noah? I turned, and there she was at the end of the line, hair in a low knot, sunglasses on top of her head like a tiara she forgot to remove. Austin, apparently, was smaller than it looked on maps. My body did what it remembered. Hard sprint, heat in the neck, palms stupid. I put my card back in my wallet and set the coffee down because my hands could not be trusted. She smiled with her eyes. I was hoping I'd run into you. How? I asked carefully. It wasn't curiosity. It was inventory. She gestured to the street like she'd conjured it. I've been visiting. We pitched a tech client here. I thought you might be here. You pitched a tech client in a city with 1,000 tech clients, I said. And you came to the one cafe I go to because it has beans from the place you like in Portland. That's a lot of new information for someone on a break. Her smile faltered. I wanted to apologize in person. You wouldn't answer my texts. You blocked me. I get it. I do. But I just wanted you to know I'm sorry for how I handled everything. I miss you. I miss us. For a moment, the past did its trick. The thing with abusers is we don't like using that word when it's subtle. The thing with manipulative people is they're never monsters in your mind. They're the person who remembered to bring your favorite snack on road trips and who held your hand in waiting rooms, and who also forgot your birthday because of a huge project, and who told you they felt unseen after you spent a week setting up a surprise trip for their 30th. Riley was always both. My brain tried to surface a soft memory to balance this sharp moment. I didn't let it. I had practiced a sentence with my therapist that didn't leave room for interpretation. I said it slowly. I'm not available for this conversation. Her face tightened like I'd slapped her. You don't have to be cruel. Boundaries aren't cruelty, I said. They're fences with gates. I'm not opening this one. She nodded, eyes shining in a way that used to make me lose arguments I should have won. I'm staying with friends for a few days, she said. Maybe we'll run into each other again. I picked up my coffee. I hope not, I said, and walked outside into a heat that felt like a test. The first time I thought she was following me, I told myself I was being arrogant. Not everything is about you, my therapist reminded me. Then, a week later, I saw her at the grocery store 3 neighborhoods over, staring at the rotisserie chickens like they held an answer. Crazy small world, she said, smiling like we were extras in a commercial. I kept walking. 2 days after that, I saw her at the gym, talking to the front desk kid like she was registering for a class. The kid waved at me and said, "Hey man, this your friend?" Riley lifted a hand. I turned and walked back out into the sun, drove to a park, and did push-ups in the grass until my triceps failed. Am I imagining this? I asked my therapist, a woman named Devin who wore sneakers to work and whose office smelled like peppermint and rain. It could be coincidence, she said. It could also be a person testing doors to see which one's open. What do I do? I asked, feeling 12. Exactly what you're doing, she said. You closed your door. You don't explain. You don't justify. If she escalates, we talk about next steps. Document. Stay boring. Staying boring is harder than it sounds when someone is trying to turn your life into a plot. The messages started coming from other directions. A friend from my old gym texted, "Riley says you're in Austin now. She's so happy for you." A mutual couple invited me to a group dinner that turned out to be Riley's birthday. I said I couldn't make it and blocked the thread. My manager at the new branch mentioned, casually, in the way adults introduce loaded topics, that a recruiter had called to verify employment history for someone named Riley who'd applied to a partner company in town. He said, "Small world," and I said, "Very," and then went to the break room and stared at a vending machine long enough that the Coke Zero started to look like a solution. I changed my number again. I didn't post my runs on Strava. I told Ms. Alvarez, my neighbor with the hydrangeas and the casseroles, not to buzz anyone in no matter how nice they seem. She said, "Even if she says she's your wife," and raised an eyebrow. "Especially then," I said. I caught myself looking out the peephole at night like a teenager in a horror movie, and then I laughed because fear turns you into who you were before you grew up. One Sunday morning, my phone pinged with a notification from a throwaway email I hadn't used since college. Subject line, "Because you won't listen." The body was a letter, not typed. A photo of a letter handwritten in Riley's neat print on the stationery my mother gave us last Christmas. Noah. I don't understand how you can pretend we didn't build a life. I know I made mistakes. I know I hurt you. But blocking me won't erase what we had. I've been in therapy. I've been journaling. I'm doing the work. I've realized how anxious I get when I feel someone pulling away and how I try to control outcomes. I'm sorry for putting you through that. I'm sorry for everything. If you've ever loved me, please meet me at the coffee shop on Barton Springs on Wednesday at 10. I'll be there whether you come or not. I'll wait as long as it takes. R. I printed the email for the file I kept in my bottom drawer, the one with dates and times I never thought I'd need. Then I went to work on Wednesday and not to the coffee shop. At 10:41 a.m., my phone buzzed with an unknown number and a voicemail beep. I didn't listen. I put the phone face down and built a pallet schedule that made sense and told two new guys where the forklift keys lived and caught a mispick before it left the bay. At lunch, I walked the perimeter of the warehouse and then finally hit play. I waited an hour, Riley's voice said. Small. I guess that's your answer. I didn't call back. Anyone who's ever been targeted by a person who can't handle a closed door knows there's a predictable curve to these things. Apology, appeal, blame, escalation. If you don't answer an apology or appeal, blame arrives dressed as concern. A mutual friend sent a screenshot of a post Riley made to a private group about narcissists who discard you when they're done, with a caption that made me laugh out loud because of how perfectly she'd inverted reality. Some people can't handle depth. They run from vulnerability. Pray for them. I told my friend to stop sending me homework and then muted his account. The accidental meetings kept happening. Once at a home improvement store I'd never been to before, where she found me in the paint aisle debating eggshell versus satin like it mattered. Once at the dog park, even though I don't have a dog and she doesn't either, standing by the gate in sunglasses like a CIA intern. She waved. I walked to the far end of the field and watched a corgi try to start a fight with a Great Dane and remembered that joy was a decision. I had things to be happy about. Cole, my manager, moved 2 departments under me because we'd stopped bleeding orders, and our returns had dropped 20% since I'd changed the receiving workflow. The Tuesday softball team went to playoffs because our shortstop could hit anything that moved, and our left fielder was a physics teacher who'd optimized his root angles. Ms. Alvarez threatened to set me up with her niece because I had a good face and knew how to make a bed. I declined gently and helped her carry potting soil up the steps. The night I realized Riley knew my schedule better than I did, it was raining the kind of Texas rain that sounds like the roof is applauding. I left work late, wipers slapping time, and saw a car in my lot with a license plate frame I recognized. Small mountain town in Colorado, where we'd gone for a long weekend the winter before. My stomach dropped and then clenched in a way that would have embarrassed me if anyone could see. I parked 2 rows over and watched long enough to see the car stay off, no lights, the silhouette still. I went around to the front and took the elevator with 2 teenagers who did not understand how old fear makes you feel. When I got to my floor, I didn't go to my apartment. I stood in the hall and listened for footsteps. Nothing. I went downstairs, out the side, and around the building, and the Colorado frame was gone like a scene that only exists when the main character is looking. Document, Devin reminded me the next day, not unkind. We don't need to convince anybody right now. We need to keep you safe and sane. Friends you can trust? People in your building who can be eyes on the ground? Ms. Alvarez would call the police if someone breathed wrong in the lobby, I said. Great, Devin said, smiling. Let her be the mayor. Let other people's nervous systems work for you for a change. The universe loves a test. 2 nights later, at 11:17 p.m., there was a knock on my door. I froze, phone in hand, heart doing percussion. The second knock was softer, then a voice through the door in a key I knew too well. Noah, it's me. I just want to talk. Please. I stood there, barefoot, face hot. Then I took one step back from the door and another and put the phone on speaker and called the non-revergency line because I was done pretending this was anything but what it was. I said my name and my address and the words, "Someone I used to date is on my doorstep," after I've asked her not to contact me. The operator said officers were on their way. I said, "Thank you," hung up, and then felt the way it feels when you finally tell a truth out loud, light, and exposed at the same time. Riley didn't knock again. She waited. I know, because I looked through the peephole like a kid. She stood there with her hands in the pockets of her raincoat, hair dark at the ends. After a minute, she sighed, loud, like something for the neighbors, and then left. The officers came 20 minutes later, polite and tired, took the statement I'd practiced giving in my head, and asked if I wanted a formal trespass notice on file. I said not yet. They said to call if she came back. I thanked them, closed the door, and sat on the floor until my legs tingled. The next morning, Ms. Alvarez knocked 3 times like a woodpecker and didn't wait for an answer. "You look like laundry," she said, pushing past me with a dish of something that steamed. "Eat! Then tell me what happened." I did both. She listened the way only someone who's loved people for 70 years knows how to listen. Then she said, "You've got a good heart. Don't let her walk around with it. Lock your door and go to work." Work is church for people like me. I went to work. I built a schedule that made sense for humans and trucks. I emailed a vendor who'd been late 3 times and threatened to switch if they didn't fix their route. I moved a pallet with my hands because sometimes you need to feel weight that's honest. At lunch, I stood at the far dock and watched rain carve the same path in the same dirt it always finds. It wasn't lost on me that I was adapting my life to someone who didn't live in it anymore. It made me furious for about a minute and then sad for 10 and then practical for as long as I needed to be. I wrote down every contact in one place, dates, times, what was said, where. I told the front desk at the gym not to let anyone ask for me by name. I started using the back stairwell when I got home. It felt paranoid. It felt like a plan. The next escalation didn't come from Riley. It came from people who appointed themselves judge and jury of my heart. Kyle called one night without texting first, which is a felony among men under 40. "Dude," he said, "she's wrecked. She's saying you're being abusive by withholding closure." "Closure is not a subpoena," I said. "Tell her I respect her healing journey from over there." "You don't have to be a jerk about it," he said, which made me laugh because I wasn't, and also because I used to accept those lines as truth. "Be well, Kyle," I said, and hung up. 2 days later, a private number left a voicemail pretending to be from a clinic asking me to call about lab results. My stomach fell through the floor for 3 seconds until my brain clicked on and reminded me I hadn't been to a clinic since I moved. I didn't call back. Later that night, I got a text from Riley's mother, who had my number because families are porous, saying, "I'm so sorry for everything. We're trying to help her. Please be patient with her." I sat with that for a long time because I loved her mother and because she had always made me feel like I belonged at their table. Then I typed, "I appreciate you reaching out. I am not able to be in contact with Riley. I wish you and your family well," and put my phone in a drawer. It would be reasonable to ask, why not a restraining order? Why not nuclear options? The honest answer is, I still didn't want to turn my life into a courtroom. I wanted boredom. I wanted Tuesdays. I wanted to have an opinion about sandwich bread again. By spring, I had what passed for a life. I knew which gas stations had decent coffee and which cashier at Huey would ask about my day in a way that made me answer honestly. I dated a woman named Tasha for a month, and we ended it kindly when we realized we were holding our breath around each other. I slept well 5 nights out of 7. I was, if not happy, then sturdy. Then the job thing happened. Not the first rumor, a recruiter calling about verifying, but something clean and stupid at once. A vendor we'd been considering for a last-a-mile pilot invited me to a lunch with their local team lead. We met at a place with too many succulents and leather chairs that looked like they were hard to sit on. The team lead shook my hand and said, "My cousin just moved here from up north. Maybe you know her? Riley Carver?" I don't remember setting the water glass down. I remember my fingers were steady and the table was solid, and the world narrowed the way a camera does when it needs to focus. I smiled like a professional. "The name's familiar," I said, and my voice sounded like a man who reads contracts. He grinned, oblivious. "She's a killer. Bygo brand energy. We just brought her on retainer to help with comms and client happiness. She's starting next month." The fog didn't roll in. It evaporated. That's the thing about naming a thing. The air clears. Of course she hadn't run into me. Of course she had friends in town. Of course she was pitching tech. She'd been pulling a chair up to my table while calling it coincidence. And now she was attaching herself to a company that fed work to mine. I paid for lunch because I needed control of something and the bill was small. I shook his hand and said we'd be in touch. Then I walked to my truck in a sun that felt like someone had turned up the wattage and sat with both hands on the wheel until I could hear my own heartbeat slow down. I called Devin and told her everything in a voice so even it scared me. "You did great," she said. "Now we move, not away, not yet. We move in the way that closes doors that should never have opened. You are allowed to ask your company to keep that vendor at arm's length. You are allowed to protect the parts of your life you've built. You are allowed to be done." I nodded, alone in my truck in a parking lot, and felt something I hadn't felt since the night I packed. Like the life I wanted might be reachable if I could stand very still and then take one step. I went home that night and sat on my balcony, the city humming below me, and realized I was back in a trap I thought I'd escaped. Riley wasn't just chasing shadows of our relationship anymore. She was weaving herself into the fabric of my new life. If I didn't draw a harder line, I'd spend every day checking corners for her. The next morning, I went straight to Cole's office. He was drinking his usual coffee, the kind so strong it looked like tar. "Got a minute?" I asked. "Always," he said, leaning back in his chair. I told him everything. Not every messy detail, but enough. That my ex had followed me here. That she'd applied to a vendor company we were about to bring on. That it wasn't just awkward, it was dangerous for me. Cole didn't laugh. He didn't ask why I hadn't told him sooner. He just nodded, jaw set. "I'll take care of it," he said. "You won't have to deal with her on this side of the fence." True to his word, by the end of the week, the vendor was no longer under consideration. Officially, it was about pricing and reliability. Unofficially, Cole had drawn a line in the sand. I was grateful in a way I couldn't put into words, but Riley didn't stop. Over the next few weeks, the coincidences escalated. I'd find notes slipped under my door in handwriting. I knew too well. I just want to talk. My gym membership flagged me one day. She'd tried to put herself down as my guest, even though I hadn't invited her. I blocked 4 new numbers in a single weekend. And then came the breaking point. It was a Thursday night, and I had just finished dinner, Ms. Alvarez's chicken stew and half a beer, when my phone lit up with a call from an unfamiliar number. I almost ignored it, but something in me answered. It wasn't Riley. It was her father. "Noah," he said, voice heavy, "I know this is unexpected. I need to apologize." I stayed quiet, waiting. She told us what she's been doing. The calls, the visits, the following you. Her mother and I, we had no idea. We thought she was moving on. I want you to know we don't condone this. It's not right. And I'm sorry you've had to deal with it. I exhaled slowly. "Thank you," I said. "She's not well," he continued. "We're pushing her to see someone, to get real help. But I wanted to call you personally, to say you don't deserve this. You never did." For a second, my chest tightened, not with longing, but with grief for what could have been. Riley had parents who saw the truth, who understood boundaries better than she ever did. "I appreciate you calling," I said, "but I need you to understand. There's no going back. I don't want contact with her, at all." "I understand," he said firmly, "and I'll make sure she understands too." We ended the call politely, but I sat there for a long time afterward, staring at the half-empty beer. That conversation was the closure Riley had been demanding all year, the kind she could never give me herself. The next time Riley tried to reach me, I didn't hesitate. I filed for a formal no-contact order. I gave the officers my file, dates, times, screenshots, voicemails. They nodded, impressed at how organized it was. "You did everything right," one said. When I walked out of that station, the air felt lighter. Not because I thought she'd vanish overnight, but because I'd finally chosen myself. She tested the order once, showed up at my building, and sat in her car. The cops escorted her away, and that was the end of it. The call stopped, the sightings stopped. The silence, at first eerie, became a relief. Months passed. I kept living. Work grew busier, Cole pushed me into bigger projects. I bought a new couch, one I picked for myself and nobody else. I let Ms. Alvarez teach me how to make arroz con pollo properly instead of living off her leftovers. I even let one of my softball teammates set me up on a date. It didn't last, but it reminded me I was allowed to start again. And then, almost a year to the day since I'd left my old city, I got a final message. Not from Riley, but from her mother. It wasn't dramatic, just a short email. "Noah, I know you don't want contact, and I respect that. But I wanted you to know Riley is in treatment now. She's getting help. We're sorry for everything she put you through. We hope you're doing well. Please take care of yourself." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. That chapter wasn't mine to write anymore. That night, I sat on my balcony again, the same way I had a year before, and realized the difference. Back then, I was running from the ghost of a woman who couldn't let go. Now, I wasn't running at all. I was simply living. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. So tell me, if you were in my position, would you have given her another chance to explain herself? Or would you, like me, cut off every avenue and finally choose peace? Let me know in the comments, hit like, and subscribe for more stories of betrayal, healing, and moving forward.